Have you ever wondered why some of the most powerful moments in Jesus' life were not marked by extraordinary words, but by extraordinary silence? In a world where every insult demanded an immediate response, Jesus revealed a strength that could never be conquered by anger, pride, or fear. Deep within the ancient Aramaic language lies a forgotten word that describes this sacred stillness, a silence so powerful that it dissolves conflict before it can take root. Most people have been taught to defend themselves the moment they feel attacked, yet Jesus pointed toward a completely different path. Today, you are about to rediscover the hidden Aramaic wisdom of shetka, a silence that does not surrender, though is not ide, and does not retreat but quietly transforms everything it touches. For thousands of years, the words spoken by Jesus have been preserved through careful transmission across generations. Although the Gospels were written in Greek, they intentionally preserved certain Aramaic expressions because their original sound carried a depth that translation could not fully capture. One of those preserved words appears in the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus warned against calling another person Rocco. This remarkable detail, recorded in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, reminds us that the living language of Jesus was Aramaic. That single preserved word opens a window into the spiritual world in which he taught, revealing that every sound, every expression, and every carefully chosen word carried profound meaning beyond ordinary speech. There is a reason Jesus healed, comforted, and instructed people in Aramaic rather than in Hebrew or Greek. Aramaic was the language that reached directly into the hearts of ordinary people, but many ancient traditions also understood its sacred sounds to carry intention, vibration, determination, and spiritual resonance. Words were never considered empty labels. They were living expressions capable of awakening something already planted within the human soul. This is why pronouncing shetka, meaning sacred silence or holy stillness, is believed by many students of the Aramaic tradition to reconnect us with our original design, the quiet place where fear loses its authority and the divine presence becomes unmistakably clear. When most people hear the word silence, they imagine weakness, avoidance, or surrender. Yet the silence lived by Jesus carried none of those qualities. His silence was never passive. It was deeply intentional. It flowed from complete inner authority rather than emotional reaction. Throughout his ministry, the religious authorities repeatedly questioned his teachings, challenged his identity, and searched for reasons to condemn him. False accusations, public criticism, and constant attempts to trap him became almost daily occurrences. Yet over and over again, Jesus refused to let his enemies dictate the atmosphere of his spirit. This is exactly why the warning about Rocco appears so significant. Jesus taught that words spoken from contempt poisoned the one who speaks them before they ever reach the one being insulted. The real battlefield was never the tongue, it was always the heart. Now consider something remarkable. Instead of teaching his followers how to win arguments, Jesus showed them how to master themselves. Every insult presented an opportunity to remain rooted in divine presence rather than human pride. This forgotten wisdom is beautifully reflected through shetka, meaning sacred silence. It is not merely the absence of speech, it is the presence of unshakable peace before any response is chosen. Once this truth settles into your heart, every difficult conversation begins to look completely different. Imagine standing before someone determined to misunderstand you. Every sentence you speak becomes another opportunity for them to accuse you. Every explanation only fuels another argument. Human instinct immediately whispers that you must defend yourself, prove your innocence, and protect your reputation. That instinct is precisely what Jesus quietly exposed. The ego believes every accusation deserves an answer. The spirit knows that not every voice deserves your attention. This is where the hidden wisdom of shetka, meaning sacred silence, begins transforming everyday life. Sacred silence is not refusing to speak because you are afraid. It is choosing not to surrender your inner peace to someone else's emotional storm. The religious leaders surrounding Jesus often expected him to react according to the same patterns that governed everyone else. Anger would have justified more anger. Defensiveness would have created endless debate. Fear would have handed them complete control over the conversation. Instead, his calm presence continually disrupted expectations. There is extraordinary freedom hidden inside that example. Every time someone insults you, your attention faces a choice. Will you invest your energy feeding the conflict, or will you preserve it for something greater? Most people measure strength by the volume of their voice. The kingdom revealed by Jesus measures strength by mastery over one's own heart. When we react instantly, we often become prisoners of another person's emotions. When we pause in sacred stillness, we remain free to choose wisdom instead of impulse. This does not mean injustice should never be confronted. Jesus himself spoke boldly whenever truth required it, but he never allowed offense to decide the timing of his response. That difference changes everything. Perhaps the greatest miracle of Shetka is that it interrupts the chain reaction through which one wounded heart creates another wounded heart. Silence becomes the doorway where anger loses momentum, fear begins to dissolve, and clarity quietly returns. The person standing before you may still be shouting, but within you, another voice has already begun to speak. If this teaching already feels this deep, imagine having a full guide with deeper explanations of Jesus's true teachings in Aramaic. You'll find the link to the study guide in the comments. And what comes next reveals why sacred silence is only the beginning of a far greater transformation, and the best is yet to come. In the next chapters, you'll discover what could change everything for you. There is a hidden reason why insults seem to control so many lives. The words themselves are rarely the deepest wound. What truly hurts is the identity we believe. Those words have the power to destroy. That is exactly where Jesus directed his teaching. He did not begin by changing people's circumstances. He began by transforming the place inside the human heart, where every reaction is born. When Jesus spoke about Rocco in the Sermon on the Mount, he was revealing something far greater than proper speech. He was exposing the invisible chain that links contempt, wounded pride, and endless conflict. The moment an insult awakens the ego, peace immediately begins to disappear. This is why Shetka, pronounced Shetka, meaning sacred silence or holy stillness, becomes far more than remaining quiet. It creates a sacred space where the false self loses its urgency, and the spirit quietly takes its rightful place. For just a few moments, something extraordinary begins to happen. The impulse to interrupt starts to fade. The desire to prove yourself slowly loses its strength. The fear of being misunderstood no longer controls every decision you make. Instead of reacting from wounded pride, you begin responding from peaceful awareness. This is completely different from suppressing emotions. Suppression hides pain beneath the surface until it eventually explodes. Sacred silence allows you to observe your emotions without allowing them to become your master. That quiet awareness changes everything. Many of the encounters recorded in the Gospels reveal this remarkable quality in Jesus. Even when surrounded by hostility, false accusations, and constant opposition, he never allowed the emotional atmosphere around him to determine the atmosphere within him. He carried peace into places filled with conflict. Imagine approaching every difficult conversation with that same inner stability. Imagine no longer feeling compelled to explain yourself to every critic or defend your reputation every time someone misunderstands your intentions. That is where genuine freedom begins. Most people spend their lives trying to silence the voices around them. Jesus quietly demonstrated a far greater wisdom. When the storm within becomes still, the voices outside gradually lose their power. This is one of the greatest paradoxes of spiritual maturity. The quieter your heart becomes, the clearer your discernment grows. You begin recognizing which conversations deserve compassion, which situations require truth, and which moments are transformed simply by peaceful silence. The world often mistakes immediate reaction for courage. The kingdom revealed by Jesus teaches something completely different. Sometimes the greatest strength is not found in speaking first. It is found in remaining deeply rooted until wisdom chooses the right words. And in the next chapter, you will discover why that silence was never empty. It quietly prepares the heart to release a power that most people never learn to recognize. The world often teaches that authority belongs to the loudest voice in the room. Jesus revealed a completely different kind of authority, one that was never measured by volume but by inner peace. When people expected anger, he answered with calm. When they expected fear, he remained steady. When they hoped to provoke him, they encountered someone who refused to let another person's emotions govern his own heart. That example still speaks with extraordinary power today. The practice of Shetka, pronounced Shetka, meaning sacred silence or holy stillness, does not ask you to become passive. Instead, it teaches you how to remain spiritually grounded when everything around you is trying to pull you into confusion. Think about how quickly conflict usually grows. One harsh word produces another. One accusation demands another defense. Pride answers pride, until both people forget why the disagreement even began. This pattern has repeated itself throughout history because very few people choose to interrupt it. Jesus did. Every time he refused to surrender his inner peace to the hostility surrounding him, he revealed a kingdom that could never be shaken by human opinion. His strength was never rooted in controlling other people. It was rooted in complete mastery over himself. That same invitation remains available today. When another person's anger cannot awaken anger inside you, something begins to change. When another person's fear cannot control your decisions, freedom quietly appears. When another person's contempt cannot separate you from compassion, your heart begins reflecting the character that Jesus demonstrated. This is why sacred silence becomes an act of spiritual authority. It protects your clarity before protecting your reputation. It preserves your discernment before preserving your pride. Most importantly, it allows wisdom to arrive before your words leave your mouth. Many of us know the pain of speaking too quickly. One sentence spoken in anger can wound relationships that took years to build. Yet one moment of peaceful silence can completely change the direction of the same conversation. That brief pause creates room for understanding. It creates room for mercy. It creates room for truth to replace emotional reaction. Perhaps this explains why the presence of Jesus brought peace even before he began speaking. People encountered not only his teaching, but also the quiet strength flowing from his heart. The invitation before us is not simply to admire that example. It is to live Italiano. Every difficult conversation becomes another opportunity to choose presence instead of impulse. Every insult becomes another opportunity to discover that your true identity rests far deeper than another person's opinion. That is, the quiet revolution hidden within Shetka. One peaceful heart has the power to stop a cycle of conflict that might otherwise continue for generations. Right now, you might be asking yourself, why am I only discovering this truth now? Don't worry. We thought about that. We're here to help you go deeper with a guide made for this journey. The link is in the comments. There comes a moment in every life when silence becomes a choice rather than an accident. That moment often arrives after disappointment, betrayal, misunderstanding, or rejection. We suddenly realize that no explanation can change a heart determined not to listen. It is precisely there that the teaching of Jesus begins to shine with new clarity. The purpose of Shetka, pronounced Shetka, meaning sacred silence or holy stillness, is not to help us escape difficult situations. Its purpose is to prevent those situations from stealing the peace that God has already placed within us. Most people believe peace comes after conflict ends. Jesus revealed that true peace begins long before circumstances change. When your heart remains quiet, your decisions become wiser. When your spirit is no longer driven by fear, compassion naturally replaces resentment. Instead of asking, "How can I prove I am right?" you begin asking, "How can I remain faithful to the truth that lives within me?" That single change transforms relationships. It transforms families. It transforms communities. Perhaps the greatest victory over Rocco is not convincing another person to stop insulting you. The greatest victory is discovering that their words no longer have the power to define who you are. Your identity was never created by human approval. Neither can it be destroyed by human rejection. This is why Jesus consistently invited people to seek the kingdom within before trying to change the world around them. Every outward action first grows from an inward condition. When the heart is anchored in divine presence, external storms gradually lose their ability to produce internal chaos. Imagine waking each morning carrying that kind of freedom. Imagine entering every conversation without the constant need to defend yourself. Imagine becoming the one person whose peace remains steady while everyone else is reacting. That is not weakness. That is spiritual authority. Every practice of Shetka quietly trains the soul to remember where its true security comes from. Little by little, your words become fewer, but they carry greater wisdom. Your reactions become slower, but your influence becomes stronger. People begin noticing something different about you, not because you speak more loudly, but because your peaceful presence begins speaking before your voice ever does. we are just scratching the surface of this ancient power. Get ready, because in our next video, I will reveal even deeper Aramaic codes that unlock spiritual authority you've never imagined. Make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on so you don't miss this unfolding revelation. The wisdom of Jesus was never meant to remain an inspiring idea. It was meant to become a daily way of living. Every morning gives us another opportunity to choose peace before the world begins demanding our attention. This is where the practice of shet, meaning sacred silence or holy stillness, becomes more than a beautiful word. It becomes a sacred rhythm that slowly reshapes the heart from within. For the next 30 days, begin each morning by sitting quietly for 3 minutes before reaching for your phone or beginning your daily routine. Take a slow breath, relax your shoulders, and gently repeat shetka 7 times. Speak the word slowly, allowing each pronunciation to become an invitation rather than a performance. As you repeat the word, do not force your thoughts to disappear. Simply observe them without following them. Let every anxious thought pass by, like a cloud moving across the sky. Throughout the day, whenever you feel offended, misunderstood, or tempted to react immediately, pause for a single breath before answering. Silently repeat shetka once more. Allow that brief moment of sacred stillness to become the space where wisdom arrives before your emotions take control. Over time, you may notice something remarkable. The situations around you may not change overnight, but your relationship with them certainly will. Words that once wounded you begin losing their power. Conflicts that once consumed your energy become opportunities to practice quiet strength. Little by little, you begin reflecting the peaceful authority that Jesus demonstrated throughout his earthly ministry. The greatest miracle is not that the world becomes quieter. The greatest miracle is that your heart does. Just a quick reminder, the transformation guides for a fuller life are waiting for you right there in the comments. Before you leave, if this message touched your heart or brought new understanding into your life, WRITE, the word restoration, in the comments below. Your testimony may encourage someone else who is seeking healing and renewal. Thank you for sharing this moment of ancient wisdom with us. Until the next revelation, walk in peace, walk in freedom, and walk in the power of shetka.